So after nearly a 2-month saga, and really you can even say going all the way back to the offseason, the standoff between Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat is now over, as the Heat and Butler have finally agreed to part ways, with the Heat agreeing to send him to the Golden State Warriors in a multi-team deal in exchange for Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, and a first-round pick. Schroeder and PJ Tucker also included in the deal, with Schroeder headed to Utah, while the Heat will also receive the Warriors' first-round pick in this year's draft, the pick being top 10 protected. But obviously that will most likely convey, given where the Warriors are currently at in the standings, and also you would assume they're going to be a little bit better now with Jimmy Butler. But the biggest news, in my opinion anyway, in this transaction is also the contract extension for Jimmy Butler that was made right after the trade, to the tune of $121 million over the next 2 years. Jimmy declines his player option at $52 million next season and will now re-up with the Warriors for around $60 million per over the next 2 seasons. And look, while we all know the Warriors had to do something, it was reported they were making calls to every big name, big star around the league to try and get another star player to put alongside Steph Curry. Signing Jimmy to that 2-year max extension is actually going to be one of their biggest regrets, and I hate to say it, but it's going to set the franchise back even further. I'm sure you're probably asking why, so let's talk about it. Of course, be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel and you like this type of content. I would greatly appreciate it. Help us get to 100,000 subscribers. We are nearly there. Now, as a Bulls fan, I'll always appreciate Jimmy Butler for his hard work ethic, his determination, and his story of humble beginnings and turning himself into the player he is today. And for his flaws, the drama and the baggage that comes with him, we all know Jimmy Butler is still an incredible player and a very impactful player on both sides of the ball. That said, what I often think gets lost in conversations is that in recent years, Jimmy Butler has actually started to show some signs of regression in his older age, now 35, where he isn't as efficient on offense, nor is he the defender that he used to be. But in Jimmy Butler's mind, he still believes he's the player he was in his mid-20s. And his ego has gotten to him so much that it's negatively impacted those around him. Now, maybe a fresh start on a new team can change that, and he also accepts a role as being the number 2 option when he's been the first option throughout his entire tenure with the Miami Heat. But either way, and I know I said this in a recent video, Jimmy thinks he is a lot better than he actually is. And I don't know how well that's going to go over in Golden State, where this is Steph Curry's team, and they've established a culture of team basketball with a high degree of ball movement and floor spacing, when Jimmy Butler is predominantly a player who likes the ball in his hands and operates in the half court, and also a player who doesn't typically space the floor. You also add him to a team with the likes of Draymond Green, who is a very hard-headed, stubborn player and doesn't take any BS from anybody. Jimmy Butler's been known for his up and down effort and demeanor in the regular season. The playoffs is a different story. We all know Jimmy balls out in the playoffs, but we all know Jimmy doesn't take the regular season as seriously, and Draymond Green isn't going to stand for that. I mean, we've seen Draymond yell and call out his teammates in game, like Buddy Hield earlier in the season, or when he punched Jordan Poole in training camp. I don't know if that's going to go over well if Butler and Draymond's personalities start to clash. But the fit aside, all right? The fit aside, which I don't like very much, but I do believe they will be better. I think they'll be better than they were yesterday. But the fit aside, the biggest issue I have with this trade wasn't the trade necessarily itself, but the contract extension that came with it, to taking Jimmy to $121 million that they're going to pay him through the age of 37. An organization that already has one of the highest payrolls in the league, a team that will be nearing the second apron after this contract, especially if they want to add some pieces on the margins, which they're going to need to do since they just got rid of a lot of their role players on the margins, and Kyle Anderson, Lindy Waters, Dennis Schroeder, of course Andrew Wiggins, who's a starter on their team. But Butler, giving him that contract at his age, also with his injury history, which we didn't even mention that before, as Butler's been in and out of the lineup for the better part of the last 3 seasons, paying him that kind of money at age 35. Steph is about to turn 37 next month. Draymond is on the wrong side of 30. Buddy Hield's on the wrong side of 30. That is a pretty big swing, one last swing, to try and go all in to win a championship with Steph and Draymond. And I'm sitting here and looking at this roster and saying, yeah, I don't see it. I don't see how this now makes the Warriors a legitimate title contender, not in a very competitive Western Conference where they're already sitting 500 and 11th in the standings with a very big hill to climb. Do I think the Warriors are going to make the playoffs now? Yes, I wouldn't have said that before. Do I see them being better than a first round exit? Probably not, especially considering they're going to be one of the lower seeds, and I don't see them being a team like the Thunder or the Grizzlies in a 7-game series. Now, the good thing for the Warriors is that while they gave up a first-round pick in this deal, they were able to hold on to their young core players and guys like Moody, Podziemski, Kuminga, which is pretty key, as I think most of us thought they would have to give up at least one of those guys to get a veteran star-level player. So I normally would say that this isn't going to set the Warriors that far back, but here's the thing. After making this trade, the Warriors, while they still have Steph and Jimmy under contract, they're going to keep swinging for the fences. They're not going to win a championship this year, which means in the offseason, they're going to continue to sell off future assets to try and justify the trade and signing Jimmy Butler. They'll bring in older vets who they believe can get them there. They'll keep kicking the can down the road, and before you know it, that future will slowly start dwindling down. Maybe trading away more draft picks, perhaps selling off on Kuminga, who is set to become a restricted free agent this summer. Another season goes by, and now Jimmy and Steph are in their late 30s and nearing retirement. And then what? And I guess then they'll be asking themselves, was the trade for Jimmy Butler worth it? Going all in and paying a guy over $60 million per year who has already started declining in play and a recent history of injuries, and also for a player who has recently admitted he doesn't have the joy that he used to in playing basketball. Now, maybe that's because of all the tension between him and Pat Riley, and maybe he does get his joy back going to a new team, but remember, Jimmy was dead set on going to Phoenix. The only team that he was willing to go to and sign an extension for was in Phoenix, even turning down other teams who were interested in him because he wouldn't commit to signing there long term. He didn't get his wish, he did get paid, he's going to a big market franchise with a big name player in Steph Curry, but he didn't land where he wanted to go. And it makes you think, with the temperament of Jimmy Butler and how up and down he is when it comes to his attitude, will he eventually go back down this path where he's found himself towards the end of his days in Miami, where he wasn't able to find joy in the game of basketball? I will say, this is a pretty solid return for the Miami Heat, all things considered, especially when they had very little leverage in the situation, when teams around the league knew that Jimmy had played his last days in Miami, and knowing a trade to the Suns wasn't going to work with Beal not budging on removing his no-trade clause. So getting a first-round pick in this upcoming draft, a pick that will likely be a mid-first rounder, in addition to Andrew Wiggins, who is still a solid player in the league, by the way, and a contract they may be able to flip down the line. Obviously it's not a haul for Jimmy Butler, but they were never going to get some insane return for Butler given the circumstances they found themselves in. We'll see if Miami has any additional moves up their sleeve before the deadline. Same with the Warriors, because as currently constructed, they're still not good enough to win a title. And I just hope this doesn't lead to them making more ill-advised moves, all-in type moves to try and push for a title that is likely not going to be there. I would love to hear what you guys think, though. You let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.